Hi everyone, today I'm going to be watching Fire Walk with Me, the Twin Peaks movie. This is a movie that was released after the series was made, but the contents of the movie are a prequel to the story of what we see in the series. I first saw this movie when I was 16 years old. It was a good few years after its release, and by that time the kind of hype around Twin Peaks had died down somewhat, and the negative publicity that came along with the movie had also died out. It was a movie that was received badly at the time, both from critics and from fans. I believe that it was booed and that critics walked out at its premiere. The star of the series, Kyle MacLachlan, came out and said that he wasn't sure that it was the right thing to do making the movie because of its heavy violent content and the fact that it was so different from the TV show in this sense. I've also seen this movie on the big screen. They did a David Lynch special at one of my local cinemas and I went along to see it. Of all the movies that were showing at the time, this one was the most attended, which I was quite surprised about. I think that might be testament to the fact that Twin Peaks is kind of an everlasting thing, and maybe it picks up fans at any time because it's kind of it hasn't really aged. I don't think. I think it is a series, and along with the movie as well, the whole Twin Peaks collection, I think it stood the test of time. I would recommend, if you get the chance, to watch it on the big screen. There are some notable differences when you see it on the big screen. The pink room scene is a little more intense, as if you're actually in there with Laura and Donna, and the audio is a little more succinct. I also think that seeing it on the big screen makes the beginning of the movie, the first half of the movie, a little more easier to digest, I guess. This is going to be a two-part recap of the movie, so I will probably stop at the point where we switch to Twin Peaks and Laura comes in. That seems to be a definitive point in the movie, so I'll stop. The first part of my rewatch and commentary will be up until then, and the second part will cover everything from that point where Laura appears. So when I first saw this movie, I wasn't surprised by it because I was familiar with David Lynch's directing style by then. However, I did think the tone of the movie and everything about the movie is quite far removed from the series, and I can understand why some fans, especially the fans that maybe weren't as invested in the show, might have been upset or, distanced by the movie. I think personally that it is one of my favourite David Lynch movies. The movie was directed and written by David Lynch, and it was also the screenplay was also written by Robert Engels, who also wrote some Twin Peaks episodes. If you're new to this film and want to know a bit more about its history, you can just Google it. There are articles online such as one entitled Fire Walk with Me, the film that almost killed Twin Peaks, for example, if you want to know how badly it was received at the time. I think that nowadays, that this movie is far more acceptable and far more understandable given Lynch's whole body of work, and understandable in the entire context of understanding the Twin Peaks world. Yeah, I saw David Lynch, he, in explaining why the movie was so different to the series, especially in regards to like the humor of it or lack of. And he said that Laura Palmer's story did not have any humor in it, which is fair enough, I suppose. But I guess if you are a new time viewer, that the tonal differences might be a little bit of a shock at first, but I think if you can stick with it, it's definitely worthwhile watching the movie. And if you want to have the whole experience and understand, you know, if you are going, maybe thinking about watching the 2017 series, I would definitely recommend watching this movie. And so that's it, right? So the slow and somber music at the beginning, it's like sort of a dark jazz song. It's completely different in tone and style to the theme tune of Twin Peaks, the series, and I think it sets the mood immediately. It sort of tells us that something is going to be, the story is going to be dark and ominous. The credits as well, they kind of deliberately, I think, lull a person to sleepiness, that, you know, this dark dreaminess, just to get to the point where we are going to be terrified by the opening scene. Every single time. I mean, what a terribly dark way to open a movie. Whereas before we opened with Laura's body, kind of peaceful, angelic, even lying dead, but this time we open and we actually see the event of someone being killed, and it's terribly distressing. This is a very weird scene with the agents and the teenage children on the school bus. It's a very, very weird scene, and I think it's a little far into the Lynchian mindset. I think it's a scene that is not really funny, and it's not understandable. Yeah, it's not really funny, it's just kind of perversely weird as well, because it involves these kids and, you know, people being arrested and you know, body searched. It's just to come to a scene like this so early on in the movie, I think it's a little bit, you know, this could be a scene that alienates viewers straight away. I don't know if it's meant to make fun of the agents, because what they are doing doesn't seem like something that's a huge kind of deal. You know, they are arresting what looks like a bus driver and a couple of girls. Another thing, I think, when we meet these characters such as Gordon Cole again, Gordon is very lovable in the series. He's a funny guy, a funny character, but when we see him here, it's almost as if, because he doesn't have the characters around him to interact with, he's not as it's not as funny to see him, you know, shouting and being hard of hearing. It's not quite as funny, it's just weird. I like to see these ladies coming in and out of Cole's office. I think that's kind of amusing to see that. And walking right into the frame of the camera as they pass by. Okay, so we get to the Portland airport and Kiefer Sutherland is there. I love Kiefer Sutherland. I think he's a marvellous actor. I've seen him in a lot of stuff, and I liked seeing him in this role, which is slightly different from the kind of roles he's normally asked to play. And I think, you know, it's wonderful to have an actor who has kind of a name that carries some weight with it, associated with the Twin Peaks world. So they arrive at the airport here, and Gordon Cole is there, and he brings out Lil. So Cole is complimentary about Sam. You can interpret this. If you just watch this scene with Lil coming in, it kind of looks a lot weird. And it sort of seems to almost undermine the agents a little bit, makes them out to be part of a circus, I guess. And maybe it feels a little bit like that, but what I think is going on is that Cole has brought Sam into a project because of his good work in this other case, and he has brought Chet and Sam to work on the Teresa Banks case, and he's using Lil as a kind of training object, because otherwise he could just say everything that Chet later decodes from Lil. Cole could just say these things to Sam and Chet, but he doesn't. So I think that Lil is being brought in to maybe train both Sam, especially Sam, but Chet as well, and to prepare them for the kind of case that they are going to encounter, the Blue Rose case. The Blue Rose is not explained initially, and most people, most fans now think that the Blue Rose represents kind of an X-Files kind of case, you know, one that involves the supernatural. I do think that, and I also think that it goes a little deeper than that, maybe, because of what Sam says to Chet later on. Before Chet goes back to the caravan park, the trailer park, Sam says to him, "You're going back for the Blue Rose." And I think that the Blue Rose also is kind of the umbrella under which Gordon Cole collects sort of agents that he thinks have the ability to work on these kind of cases. So I think that he looks for men and women who have the potential to kind of use their powers of the mind, kind of psychic powers, if you like. I'm not quite sure what to call it. We saw it with Cooper a lot, you know, he kind of had this sixth sense, this intuition, this ability to see beyond the norm. And I think that's what Cole looks for in his agents who work for him on these kind of Blue Rose cases. And so I also think the Blue Rose represents the kind of agents and the tools that the agents use, these mental tools, if you like, to solve the cases. In terms of these two agents that we are introduced to, Chet Desmond, you know, I've heard a lot of people say that he was the opposite to Cooper. I wouldn't say he was the opposite exactly. They'd certainly share a kind of work ethic, I think, and this dogged determination to get to the truth. But Chet is kind of like the way his physical sense, the way he speaks, the way he treats other people, I think is very different. His speech pattern is almost like lackadaisical, slow. He is a little bit more straight-faced, I think, than Coop. He doesn't seem to have a pleasant humour. When we do see any signs of humour in him, it's when he kind of is teasing Sam, which I don't think is necessarily all that pleasant and doesn't endear you to the character. So the idea of the Blue Rose being this mysterious thing that Chet can't discuss with Sam, I think because Sam isn't quite there yet. You know, Chet, as they are driving along, he tests him on what he remembers seeing about Lil, and I think that's proof that Sam is being indoctrinated into this kind of unit of special agents. So I find these scenes at the sheriff's station a little bit unpleasant. Okay. These characters are so unlikable. The deputy and the receptionist, completely at odds with, you know, Andy and Lucy, for example, in the series. You kind of just want to slap them, actually, because of the foolish way that they're carrying on. They come across as complete morons. You know, they don't seem to have much intelligence, but you could say that about Andy and Lucy, but Andy and Lucy are kind of heart, and this, you know, this is a stark contrast, and it surely can't be a coincidence that these characters were chosen and written like this, a complete contrast to Twin Peaks. Actually, it's worth thinking about, you know, Cooper, if he'd come across these people, how he would have dealt with them. And I think maybe there wouldn't be that much difference between his approach and Desmond's approach, basically laying down the law here. You know, they seem fairly unconcerned about Teresa Banks. They pass her off as someone that nobody cared about and almost say, well, if nobody else cares about her, well, why should we then? So Sam Stanley has a few idiosyncrasies. He seems to have this OCD thing going on where he is, you know, he says he's counted up all the cost of all the furniture in the sheriff's office. I think that tells you quite a lot about Sam's character. It's mildly amusing, but again, you know, a little bit weird and disturbing as well. We see Teresa Banks on the morgue table, and again, if you think back to how Laura Palmer looked when she was on the mortuary table, she looked angelic, at peace, whereas Teresa Banks is lying there and she looks grotesque, like some kind of, she doesn't even look like herself. So I think that is a deliberate, no, that's a deliberately contrast again to Laura. Something that is unpleasant viewing. It's almost like David Lynch is shoving it down our throats. You know, when he has free reign, he's going to show the truth about murder and violence and evil. And this is its face right here, this poor woman. So they go to this diner, and the diner is like far from being the Double R diner. It's like they've stepped onto the opposite side of the world maybe, and this place is weird and it's dark and it's full of oddball characters who kind of look like they've had a hard life, to say the least. And when they speak, it is in broken sentences. It's kind of cryptic lines that actually don't seem to make any sense. We get this unsettling fluorescent light flashing, which Lynch seems to like to use in a lot of his movies. We see like this scene of the guys in the back, and the guy sitting down, he seems to be staring directly at the camera, which is fairly unsettling. You know, we only get a glimpse of that, but if you actually look at his face in that scene, he is staring down the camera lens in an intimidating way. And the idea of electricity, we saw it over the credits with the kind of TV on standby, and the idea of kind of electricity out of control, I think, is brought up again in that scene with the broken lamp. Then we see this this waitress woman. She looks like she doesn't want to be pleasant to anyone, and she is very uncomplimentary about Teresa. She's kind of disguising her instincts, I guess, with smoking, and the act of the smoking kind of comes across as being insolent. Sam is a little bit pedantic there when he says that coffee is a drug. Of course, you know, the mention of coffee again is a little bit kind of pissing all over the series. So we see this this weird guy who doesn't look entirely switched on. I would say he seems to be a little bit confused, and with him is this woman who seems to be someone removed from her time period. She looks like she's from like the 50s, and she's done up in this strange outfit for that time of night, and she appears to be French. Clearly from her delivery she's not actually French. It's difficult to tell what she actually says in the scene, because she pronounces it a little bit weird. She's like La Nuit. I mean, who is this woman? Is she like a prostitute that's done up like this because of this guy's whims? You know, she might just be saying, let's go and get this over with, sort of thing. I don't really know. It's curious. She looks like, I mean, she reminds me a little bit of a figure from an Edward Hopper painting. So the lady waitress says that Teresa's left arm went completely numb just before she died. That kind of reminds me of the one-armed man. And so this scene at the diner, I think, is actually quite unpleasant. I don't think any of the characters are particularly likable or funny, or I think that it's a difficult scene to digest. It just leaves me feeling a little bit unsettled. And so they go to the trailer park. So this guy, Carl Rod, who runs the trailer park, he's quite an interesting character. I've read somewhere that this scene where he is speaking to the agents and he says, I've been places and I don't want to go anywhere else, that was apparently improvised. I think that is one of the most memorable lines in that scene because it's so emotional. We get this strange camera perspective, first person perspective of this woman who comes into the trailer. She reminds me a little of a character in one of the episodes of Twin Peaks where Audrey is at One-Eyed Jack's and this seamstress lady comes in and she's all bent over and sort of dirty looking, kind of old, and looks ruined, sort of as if she is just a character on the outskirts of society. When she is asked if she knows Teresa Banks, she starts to shake a little and leaves, as if she probably knows more than she can say. And at this point, it's when we get that moment when we see Carl's face change, as if he's overcome by something, and then the camera pans out, you know, as if we're seeing inside his mind, and we see the electricity pole, which seems like a weird kind of thing to show, you know, him thinking, and we hear these weird kind of noises as well. And then when it cuts back to Carl, he looks like he's crying. It's that point where he says he's already gone places. He doesn't want to go anywhere else, he wants to stay there. What is Carl talking about? Is he talking about, has he experienced something like another spiritual realm? Is that what he's talking about when he says he's gone places, or does he actually mean physical places? I think the implication, because of, you know, the electricity pole, which we later see is connected to the spirits, I think the connection is that Carl has somehow experienced a little bit, maybe not the whole, maybe not, you know, intensively, but he's certainly been touched by this weird kind of subworld. So when we see Chet Desmond return to the trailer park, and Sam says, "You're going back for the Blue Rose," I think this is when we see Gordon Coles's kind of training, and training them to be intuitive and work with their sixth sense. I think that's where we see this coming to play, because he is clearly being led by his feelings here, his internal compass. He's working on something that is not tangible. He would never know where to go unless he is feeling it from inside, I think. I don't think something's drawing him. I think he himself is drawing himself to this trailer and where he finds this ring. That's a very odd way to leave Chet Desmond reaching for the ring, implying that something terrible has happened after he takes that ring. Okay, so we cut to Philadelphia, and finally, here's Cooper. And he comes into the office in a scene which I really like, because I feel like it's classic Cooper, you know, talking about his dreams. He mentions a date and a time, and Cole is very open to hearing this. Cooper seems to know that he has to do this kind of ritual of standing in front of this security camera, as if maybe he saw this happening in his dream. And just after the elevator opens, you can hear this kind of weird wind sound, as if something has just appeared there and was not actually in the elevator when it came up. If you've seen the missing pieces on the Blu-ray, then this scene might be a little more understandable with David Bowie. However, if you haven't seen them, I'll just kind of explain that. In the Blu-ray pieces, we see this character at another location somewhere else in the world, and he's wearing the same clothing and everything, and then he suddenly appears at the FBI's headquarters. So it appears that he can travel through space and time. I really love this scene with David Bowie, actually. I think it's one of the most entertaining in the movie because it's so cryptic, and David Bowie is just in it for minutes, and yet he kind of steals the scene. Phillip Jeffries. He trips into the office kind of looking like a man who was a little bit drained, a little bit confused. He kind of looks a little bit as if he is going to be ambushed by the other agents, and his response to that is to say that he doesn't want to talk about Judy. Clearly, Judy is a very important character in the Twin Peaks world. If what has happened to Phillip Jeffries during the time he's been missing involved Judy, but because we don't know who Judy is, this kind of seems very abstract. Cooper looks very distressed, as if he is aware that a momentous thing has just happened with Jeffries reappearing. And then the scene kind of starts to dissolve, and we see this kind of overlay of what looks like the TV that we saw at the beginning of the film, with the TV in kind of standby mode, not actually transmitting anything. Or is it? Jeffries points at Cooper and says, "Who do you think this is there?" And I think this is implying that wherever Jeffries has been, he knows that something has happened to Cooper, which hasn't happened yet in the linear timeline. I think when he points at Cooper, he's actually saying, "That's Bob." I think this tells you instantly that Jeffries has been amongst these spirits, and also that the timelines don't work the same wherever this spirit dimension is, wherever it exists. So as Phillip Jeffries is talking to Gordon Cole, we see into this kind of strange place, which appears to be the meeting place for the spirits. So we see a man wearing a mask who is kind of moving his body in a strange kind of fashion. We see the little man from the Red Room, and we see Bob, as well as a host of other characters, including the grandmother and her grandson. And they say some very strange things. First of all, the little man, he says Garmin Bozier, which sounds like, sounds like nonsense. Then we see this shot of creamed corn, and he talks about the Formica table. while Jeffries is kind of manically describing what has happened to him, although it doesn't really make much sense, and he seems very distressed. The kind of way that the little man is talking reminds me of the same way that the guy was talking in the diner earlier when he said Irene is her name and it is night, and now the little man is saying this is a Formica table and green is its color. It's kind of, you know, expressing the obvious, but in a way that makes you think twice about what is actually there in front of you and what the situation really is. Does the Formica table have some kind of relevance? Or is it sort of something that's been brought up because of the senses? You know, it's kind of, these spirits seem to be indulging in the senses, maybe, you know, experiencing the colors, the textures. Jeffries then says something very cryptic and mysterious. He says, "It was a dream. We live inside a dream." And I think that, well, rather than take that literally, I think you can, although, you know, as far as we know, that might be a literal statement of what actually has happened to him. But I think also you can just assume that wherever he has been, whatever has happened to him, he experienced that as if it was a dream. And the feelings of being in a dream, I'm sure we all understand that, where in a dream you kind of get carried along with things and there isn't much control. It's a world full of symbols and half meanings. We see the little boy telling Bob, basically, it seems like, to kill someone, and then the little man seems to find the idea of this hysterically funny, as if it gives him great power to think that Bob is going to be finding another victim. And then we hear Jeffrey's voice again, and he's talking about the meeting of these spirits being above a convenience store, and the word electricity is mentioned. I think it's safe to assume that the idea of electricity is an important part of what plays into this world of the spirits. Each to their own in regards to interpretation of anything in the Twin Peaks world. I think that things are so abstract and difficult to interpret that I think however you take it is how you take it, and I think that a lot of the experience of watching this movie is how you feel, and the series as well, is how you feel and how the scenes make you feel. And I sometimes think that interpreting it is less important than actually experiencing it. We hear Jeffries shout that he found something, as if he is proclaiming back to the moment when he found something. And then we see the little boy remove his mask, and behind it is a monkey. I always, you know, was confused about the monkey, and it's only recently from comments that people have made on my channel that I kind of was introduced to some ideas of what the monkey could mean. And the idea that the monkey might be sort of similar to the owls in the series, as in the spirits use the animals as kind of hosts. When we see Jeffries in The Missing Pieces, he's actually in, I think it's Buenos Aires or somewhere like that. He's in a tropical location where animals like monkeys would be in the area, and so you kind of can connect those things in that sense. I think it's a very clever idea, one that I never actually thought of before. I don't know if the masks just are there to symbolize the fact that these spirits, they are trying to conceal themselves either in their human hosts or their animal hosts. The last part of this scene with Jeffries is quite disturbing because he looks in so much pain when he's screaming like that, and then he's gone, as if he's just slipped through the fabric of the world, you know. He's just vanished. I think it's safe to assume that Phillip Jeffries is somehow trapped in this current, if you like, almost like the electricity current with no way out. And you sense that the same thing might have happened to Chet Desmond. So when Cooper goes to the trailer park, he too is drawn to the same place that Chet Desmond was drawn to. So I think that kind of shows you that they share the same kind of psychic powers of recognizing that something important was on this one spot. So we hear from Carl that the woman and the grandson lived in the trailer that was on the spot where the ring was, and it's clear that they have been there for some time. I think, you know, when he says that Chalfont was the name of the person that was there before, it's clear from this that the spirits have been doing this for a long time. Chet Desmond's car is left in the trailer park, and when Cooper approaches it, the words "Let's rock" are written on the windscreen. It's kind of like a statement of "come and get me" or "come and get us." We know that you're after us, so come on, bring it on. It's kind of like a statement of intent as to the battle ahead between the FBI agents and all that they represent, and the spirits and what they want to achieve, which is nothing but destruction and death and pain and fear. So we see Cooper in that last segment discussing that he gets a strange feeling from this case, and that he thinks that he gets the sense that something strange is going to happen, and I think that this means to him personally. I do think that for Twin Peaks fans who watch the series, to go into that movie is kind of a little bit of a and I guess it will be an unexpected shock, that the characters are also, you know, so many of the characters in that early section are unlikable, and so many of them are obnoxious. We see a lot of characters that we don't know from the series, so I guess maybe people were expecting to see more familiar faces. We get very little of Cooper in that point in this section as well. I can't imagine the reaction to it at the time when it was just released in 1992. I can't imagine why the reaction was so strong. I know that, you know, the kind of violence we see later on in the movie is rather extreme and raw. There's no glamour. There's no kind of edit to the horribleness, to the evil. We just see it for what it is. It touches a lot of nerves. This movie is Certificate 18. You know, thinking about what we see actually in terms of violence and bloodiness on today's TV screens, the TV shows we see now are have a little more in common with Fire Walk With Me than they do with Twin Peaks the series in terms of their gory content. Next time I'm going to be watching the end of this movie. If you want to comment below about in regards to what you think of Fire Walk With Me, and how you might interpret some of the more cryptic aspects of this movie, I would love to hear that. Very interested to know if maybe how people sort of, if there are any original fans watching this, how they kind of, what they felt about Fire Walk With Me when it was first released. I was too young to watch it at the time, and I had to wait a couple of years until I could get my hands on a copy on VHS. And I never had a problem with the movie, actually. I have always liked it, even though I thought it was, you know, remarkably different to the series. I've always liked it still. I especially like the latter part with Laura in it, and seeing the kind of trauma that Laura was going through. I find it very heartbreaking and moving, and I think it really does complete the series because of the fact that throughout the series Laura kind of haunted Twin Peaks even though she wasn't there. Even though Cheryl Lee played Madeline, I don't think that Madeline was ever as important as Laura for anybody. I don't think there's anybody that will say like, oh yeah, Twin Peaks, yeah, when Madeline got killed, you know, when they're thinking about the show, I don't think they think, yeah, it's, you know, Madeline got killed. I think it's always like Laura was Laura was the victim. So I do think that, you know, the movie was and is very important, and I think that going into the new series, the movie is going to have particular significance. So anyway, that's it for now. If you would like to watch any more rewatches and kind of commentaries that I'm doing, you can subscribe to my channel if you like, and you can also follow me on Twitter at @TheLogSadie, and you can join me next time for the rest of the movies. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.